Your tax dollars are paying for dozens of Dayton police officers to work thousands of extra hours.
In fact, $1.5 million of your taxpayer money was paid out just in overtime last year alone. So tonight, a 2 News investigation is following that money and finding out how that number could impact you and your safety. Are cops cashing in and burning out? Natalie Tendall finds out.
For years, the Dayton Police Department has struggled to keep the number of patrol officers at a level that matches the number of calls they get. That means more officers are putting in extra hours to keep you safe. It's a problem even the chief told me he's concerned about. Whether it's spending hours working a standoff or helping block off the scene of a homicide, overtime is part of the job of a police officer. But the amount of overtime being paid out may surprise you.
All this overtime that you're seeing here is for the public safety.
2 News Investigates obtained salary data from the Dayton Auditor's Office. I found 52 police department employees were each paid more than $15,000 just in overtime last year. The officer who made the highest amount in overtime last year took home $88,000, $51,000 in salary, $37,000 in overtime. Altogether, Dayton Police overtime is costing taxpayers more than $1.5 million a year. But the bigger concern is the toll it takes on the people protecting you. Are cops cashing in and burning out?
Because there's more to it than just the dollars associated with that overtime. You're talking about the actual hazard and stress of the job.
Neighborhood leader David Greer says the police are doing a good job responding to calls with current staffing levels, but he's worried about all the extra hours officers are working. Even the 2 head decision makers at the police department admit they're concerned about tired officers staying sharp on the street. I went to the top and asked Chief Richard Beal and Assistant Chief Bob Shabali to explain.
But is there ever a point where there's just too much and you're afraid to burn out your officers?
Oh, I think so, absolutely. We've had some challenges having overtime assignments filled this year.
And I think there's been a point in time in our department where some of the guys are just so burned out from working so much overtime that we, on occasion, have had a tough time filling a slot or 2.
Chief Beal says when officers are fatigued, mistakes can happen. That's why they say supervisors monitor performance and typically don't allow officers to work more than 16 hours at a time. They say they're always asking questions.
Are we getting complaints? Is performance dropping? Are there injuries occurring? Is there illness?
I think it would be better to have an appropriate number of police officers as opposed to continuing to overwork the police officers.
Remember the officer who made the most in overtime last year, $37,000? The police department could have hired a new officer at an estimated $24,000. So I asked why they're not doing that.
How come you can't just hire more officers?
Well, we didn't have the ability to hire officers.
In 2008, the State Justice Department sued the city of Dayton for unfair testing of new officers and firefighters. The penalty put a hold on hiring for a little over 4 years. They just came out of it last August. Chief Beal hopes to hire 17 more officers in December.
What would be your message to the community to make sure that they're still staying safe amongst these challenges?
Well, I actually would point to the data. I mean, the good news here is that despite the decline in staffing, we are a far safer city.
Now, I checked and found that violent crime in Dayton is down 9% this year. 2 years ago, it dropped 16%. And taxpayers may be concerned about the $1.5 million being spent on overtime every year, but the city's not. I spoke with Deputy City Manager Stanley Early. He says they're always monitoring the overtime budget, and the police department is staying within it. Natalie Tendall, 2 News Investigates.